Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to another episode of Blasphemers Bible. And it sounds like we don't know our English very well, but we're on Numbers 1. Yeah, that's not number 1, it's Numbers 1. And in the third book of the Pentateuch, are we? No, is this
Fourth.
fourth? Yes.
4 or 5.
Finally.
Finally.
Yes, and this is where we get into still some legislation, but starting to get into a little bit of the horror.
Yes. Alas, the drinking game I did not prepare. But we still have the census to get through, which will be suitably dull.
Yeah, for the most part it will be. But I'm sure we're going to have a very lively discussion. I'm going to put it in the nicest terms possible.
I've read that Wellhausen called the Book of Numbers the junk room of the Bible, but I actually when I started my commentary for Numbers, I actually found it quite fascinating, both from a exegetical way, but also from a textual way, because there's a lot of textual witnesses in this book, which are very interesting.
Well, and a junk book insinuates you've got a lot of bits from different places, or at least the appearance of it. And we've already discussed before that in the original language, it's clear this is something of a compilation, but we'll get to the more interesting bits of that probably in a couple of episodes. This part...
About the name of the book. So the book in Hebrew is called Bamidbar, which is also called Bamidbar, but it's actually Bamidbar, which is the in the wilderness of, a word that appears in the first verse in chapter 1. This name is fitting for the book since it epitomizes the content of it, which focuses on the wilderness period. Another less known name attested by Rashi and Ibn Ezra is Vayidaber, and he, i.e. God, spoke, which is the first word of the book. The name's Numbers originates from the Septuagint, arithmoi, and the Vulgate numeri, which correlates with the Talmudic name of the book, Chumash HaPekudim, the fifth of the census totals, as seen in Mishnah Yoma 7:1 and Menachot 4:3, based on the census given in chapters 1-4 and 26.
The reason why it's called Bamidbar and not Bamidbar is because Bamidbar means in a desert, and Bamidbar Sinai means in the desert of Sinai. So if you want to shorten it, you say in the desert, and so you just say Bamidbar, which means
that's like the usual pronunciation, but it's not the
that's
correct,
why it's pronounced that way. It's pronounced that way because it means in the desert, and it doesn't.
Yeah, but if you follow the exact word, it's Bamidbar. But
but then it would be weird if you said it by itself.
Yeah. People are already accustomed to Bamidbar. So. So one either me or Isaac will read because
I don't mind reading. I volunteer. It's been a while, I think.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. Should we go?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Numbers 1:1. On the first day of the second month in the second year following the exodus from the land of Egypt, the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting, saying, "Take a census of the whole Israelite company of fighters by the clans of its ancestral houses, listing the names, every male, head by head. You and Aaron should record them by their groups from the age of 20 years up. All of those in Israel who are able to bear arms associated with you shall be a participant from each tribe, each one the head of his ancestral house. These are the names of the participants who shall assist you. From Reuben, Elitzur, son of Shvei-Ur. For Simeon, Shelumiel, the son of Surishadai. For Judah, Nachshan, son of Aminadav. For Issachar, this should be Nathaniel ben Tzuar. For Zebulun, it's Eliav ben Chelon. And from the sons of Joseph, from Ephraim, Elishama, son of Amihud. And from Manasseh, Gamliel, son of Pedatsur. And for Benjamin, Abidan, son of Gidoni. And from Dan, Achiezer, son of Amishadai. And from Asher, Pagiel, son of Achran. From Gad, Eliasaph, son of Deuel. And from Naphtali, Achira, the son of Enan.
I wish
these
I
are
had
the
read
elected-
this. It would be so much more fun.
I was thinking the same thing. This
It's
makes so
interesting 'cause
much
none of
sense.
these are like common names.
Sorry, guys.
Those are all like names that only appear here, I think.
These names
No.
in America.
Except for like Amish.
Abaddon, son of Gideoni. That's what I see.
Yeah.
Abaddon.
Those are the elected of the
Gideoni.
assembly, the chieftains of their ancestral tribes. They are the heads of the contingents of Israel. So Moses and Aaron took those participants who were designated by name, and on the first day of the second month, they convoked the whole company of fighters who were registered by the clans of their ancestral houses, the names of those aged 20 years and over being listed head by head. As the Lord had commanded Moses, so he recorded them in the wilderness of Sinai. They totaled as follows. The descent...
Because this list of names is necessary for, the uber galactic God to impart for all of humanity for all time.
They all have meanings and their names. Their names mean something, right, boys?
Yeah, that would be an example of fictionalization.
Their names also actually
Names
mean
have
something.
meaning. It's always a good one. Like the name of a character means something about that character. It seems to be a very common thing in fiction, not in real
Oh,
life.
I mean,
it's
I would
absolutely a
con-
common thing in fiction.
No, it's a real
especially-
thing in life too, but it is
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
also
Fair
I would
enough.
contest to that. I mean, there are some of when I'll get to this part of my commentary, there are some
Yeah.
words that were like common in the 7th century as well. So
Yeah, but
What was that Bruce Willis said in that movie? We're Americans, honey. Our names don't mean shit.
mm.
it's like Noah means comfort because he comforted the world or whatever. Like Moses explains he was given the name for a reason, but yeah. Okay, so let's do the totals. They totals as follows. The descendants of Reuben, Israel's firstborn, the registration of the clans of their ancestral house, as listed by name, head by head, all males, aged 20 years and over, all who are able to bear arms. This is going to be very repetitive. Those enrolled from the tribe of Reuben, 46,500. Of the descendants of Simeon, the registration of the clans of their ancestral house, their enrollment is listed by name, head by head, all males, aged 20 years and over, all who are able to bear arms. Those enrolled from the tribe of Simeon, 59,300.
And of course, we know that the word Simeon means monkey.
Well, I mean, most people
What?
say Simon. I don't know why it's why it became Simeon in the translations.
Do kids
Yeah,
play
it's
Shimon,
Simeon
actually.
says in Israel?
Shimon.
Do
Yeah, but
kids
isn't
play
Simon-
Simeon says in Israel?
No.
No, they say I think they say Shlomo HaMelech Amar, which is
I think
King
it's Simeon
Solomon says.
C, Simeon do.
Mm.
Hopefully not, because Simeon did a lot of genocide for
Oh
one
no,
person.
it's not Shlomo HaMelech. It's Tomer, do you remember?
No.
You don't have Simon Says, like you don't remember playing
I
the
think
the Hebrew equivalent?
I think we do, but I forgot because I don't play kids games.
It's
anymore.
something Shlomo, which is Solomon, but it's like
Maybe,
think
but
it's the king. I think it's
it's
something
irrelevant. It's
Yeah.
irrelevant. Please continue.
Okay, of the descendants of Gad, the registration of the clans of the ancestral house is listed by name, age 20 years and over, all who are able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Gad, 45,650. Of the descendants of Judah, the registration of the clans of the ancestral house is listed by name, age 20 years and over, all who are able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Judah, 74,600. Of the descendants of Issachar, the registration of the clans of their ancestral house is listed by name, age 20 years and over, all who are able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Issachar, 54,400. Of the descendants of Zebulun, the registration of the clans of their ancestral house is listed by name, age 20 years and over, all who are able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Zebulun, 57,400. Of the descendants of Joseph, of the descendants of Ephraim, the registration of the clans of their ancestral house is listed by name, age 20 years and over, all who are able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Ephraim, 40,500.
I think
Of the
it's okay
descendants
if
of
you
Manasseh,
paraphrase these next.
sorry?
I think it's okay if you paraphrase these next 9 verses.
No, please continue.
We
Of
don't
the
do
descendants of Manasseh, the
paraphrasing
registration
here.
of the clans of the ancestral houses listed by name, age 20 years and over, all who were able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Manasseh, 32,200. Of the descendants of Benjamin, the registration of the clans of the ancestral houses listed by name, age 20 years and over, all who were able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Benjamin, 35,400. Of the descendants of Dan, the registration of the clans of the ancestral houses listed by name,
Take one
age
down.
20 years and over, all who were able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Dan, 62,700.
Take
Of
out
the
your
descendants of
Energizer
Asher,
battery,
the
dude.
registration of the clans of the ancestral houses listed by name, age 20 years and over, all who were able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Asher, 41,500. Of the descendants of Naphtali, the registration of the clans of the ancestral houses listed by name, age 20 years and
Sound
over,
like
all
that
who were
guy
able to bear arms.
who
Those
sold
enrolled from the tribe of Naphtali.
micro machines back in the 90s. Good
Ah.
grief.
Yeah, Isaac, you are not
53,400.
reading this with the weight and gravitas that is the word of God.
I think he's doing fine.
Those are the enrollments recorded by Moses and Aaron.
No. It's like,
by the chieftains
which
of
which line are we on
Israel.
now?
Well,
Let me read
44,
one.
44.
Yeah,
44?
44.
Okay. Yeah.
Go for it.
These were the men counted by Moses and Aaron and the 12 leaders of Israel, each one representing his family. All the Israelites 20 years old or more who were able to serve in Israel's army were counted according to their families. The total number was 603,550. There's got to be
Should've
some
been
way of
40.
making that sound interesting.
It's a lot of people.
I feel like we're doing taxes now.
That's just the boys. The young boys.
It's interesting that it
Boy.
says age 20 and up. It doesn't say 20 to 60, which is the more traditional understanding.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, there
why
is
would
a
they have
discrepancy.
chapter 4 then, you know.
We have a discrepancy going on, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
A
Some of these have
discrepancy
seen too many
Bible?
winters.
or too few.
You're lucky you're not 70 yet.
Should we finish the chapter?
Yes. I mean, my commentary is like
Okay.
2 pages. No, 3 pages. Sorry. You can
Alright,
finish this
the
chapter.
Root to the
Alright.
Levites.
The Levites, however, were not recorded
Yeah.
among them by their ancestral tribe, for the Lord had spoken to Moses, saying, "Do not on any account enroll the tribe of Levi, or take a census of them with the Israelites. You shall put the Levites in charge of the tabernacle of the pact, all its furnishings, and everything that pertains to it. They shall carry the tabernacle and all its furnishings, and they shall tend it, and they shall camp around the tabernacle. When the tabernacle is to set out, the Levites shall take it down, and when the tabernacle is to be pitched, the Levites shall set it up. Any outsider who encroaches shall be put to death. The Israelites shall encamp troop by troop, each man with his division, and each under his standard. The Levites, however, shall camp around the tabernacle of the pact, that wrath may not strike the Israelite community. The Levites shall stand guard around the tabernacle of the pact. The Israelites did accordingly, just as the Lord had commanded Moses, so they did.
Yeah, so I have two like major notes for this section. So first, when we're talking about like the actual names and stuff before we get into the counting of everybody, this is this kind of list of names, right? Where did the author get this information? So of course, I think that they probably had access to some traditional work, right? Because these names contain a lot of El and Shaddai names,
Yeah.
rather than a lot of Yahweh names. But the names are constructed very similarly. Like we find like onomasticon, which are like potsherds, that have
Ammonite.
well, I mean, yeah. But the thing is, they have they contain names that are very similar to these. They just sometimes may contain like a different. I forget the actual term. Is it theophoric or is it theophonic? The theophonic name.
Yeah.
So like it could be like a very similar thing. Like I forget which
Basically, the name
example
of
was
a
used.
different god in the name.
In the name, but like the
Yeah.
beginning of it is different. Like one would be like Shaddai is my light,
Mhm.
but then like we have Onomasticon that also have
Yeah,
like
Suri Shaddai means,
Yahweh is my light or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
Suri
and
Shaddai is like my shadow, my shield,
My
shadow.
flint. My flint.
Yeah,
flint.
yeah,
Suri-
Oh,
stuff like
Flint?
that.
Oh, I'm getting
Yeah,
mixed
yeah.
with a different one then. Which is the
Well-
one that means shadow?
Yeah, so
Bezalel?
I was going to say
yeah,
that
yeah,
this was
Mhm.
common practice in
Sorry.
the ancient world. I think the one that most people would be like, the one that it's most likely anyone would be familiar with was Tutankhamun versus Tutankhaten. How his father was a devotee of Aten, and he was named Tutankhaten. But then when he restored the worship of the old gods, then he was renamed Tutankhamen. And then, so the same thing where the name of the god is put in to the person's name in some way.
Right. So this
Yeah.
I think this person would have had some access to a traditional list like this. Now, whether or not these would be actually the this would actually be the heritage is a different story. But because like a lot of the time in ancient histories we see that people try to give their lineage some kind of validity, I guess, by including sometimes well-known names or leaders of tribes. For example, there is a work by the he was a contemporary of Thucydides. His name is Hellanicus, and he wrote essentially a genealogical work, but he traced the lineages of very real Greek groups to like eventually back to like legendary origins. Like for example, in his work Phoronis, Hellenicus tried to record the genealogical history of the Greeks from Phoroneus, the first man. From him would have been like the Argives, the Pelagians, the Thebans. He also wrote another work called Deucalione, which is it deals with Deucalion. He's the guy who he's like their Noah, right? The guy who
Yeah, the
survived
flood guy in the other myth.
Yeah. And then he has his own descendants. So like the thing is, they took very real groups, but gave them all like this mythological kind of origin. Now, to this extent, it doesn't really seem like there's really necessity for a mythological origin, but they're certainly giving themselves antiquity here.
And in fairness, we don't necessarily know what stories were held in the most regard and were of the most interest to the people at the time this was written. So, but I think my favorite example of that is actually in the Bible. Matthew's genealogy, and distinct from Luke, is the most obviously contrived, especially with and the numbers just add up to this magic number and he's still miscounted. But he manages to take the genealogy through as many Bible stories as humanly possible, including heroines, through Tamar and Perez and Zerah and Ruth and Omar and Boaz and David, but then also like all the rest of it, he traces through the King Solomon, as opposed to one of, I think it was Nathaniel, one of the other kings. David, I don't know. He had a lot of kids. Most of them aren't even named.
They have different. They're both valid genealogies. They have different purposes, Lilith. I mean,
sweetie, they contradict. We'll get there, but go ahead and read them if you want. They do not line up.
They don't contradict. They're different.
Yes, they do.
People have different genealogies. You could have one that goes through a legal line, one that.
What was the name of the father of Joseph, according to which genealogy?
I don't have it off the top of my head.
You don't have a Bible in front of you?
Well, the fact that they are different in this case means they contradict.
Also, I thought you were against having two daddies.
No, this is his legal dad.
Oh, yeah, because, there's
This is
actually some
legal.
very
This is
interesting
his legal dad.
mythology. Very interesting Christian mythology has grown out of trying to reconcile the genealogies. Now they just try and pretend the one from Luke is for Mary, even though that's not what it says, but hey, whatever. I believe in the medieval times, there was a story about how it was one of those cases where the man dies and the wife marries the brother. And so you had like two, but it happens twice in a row in succession, so that you have like two sons of two fathers. And yeah, it was this all very convoluted explanations. It's kind of funny.
Anyway, I don't want to derail this party, so numbers one.
Of course not, I will.
I'll start. Okay,
Go, go ahead.
yeah,
Once we
before-
get, we'll talk a bit more in depth once you get to the verse 20 commentary.
Yeah, okay. But before I start, I want to just mention some of the commentators that I used. So we still have Levine and Milgrom, but now we have Jacob Licht, who was actually one of the pioneers in Qumran studies. Thank you, Kip Davis, for giving me an information about him. The commentary is on Hebrew. And also, I have Timothy R. Ashley's commentary on Numbers, and he is a First Baptist Church minister. But from what I've read, he does not subscribe to the Mosaic of authorship.
Having been a Baptist, I can say that First Baptist is usually a lot more rational and less psychotic than Faith Baptist. At least that has been my experience. Faith Baptist tends to be the ones who won't have sex standing up for fear it would lead to dancing.
Yeah, his commentary is and his commentary is decent. So
I have a lot of things to say about that.
I'm also using Levine's commentary, but I also have Bud's commentary.
Yeah, 490 citations for Ashley's commentary. So yeah, very popular. So I'll start my commentary. Verse 2, take a census. In Hebrew, it's s'u et rosh, which literally means lift the head. This idiom is found in Exodus 30:12, Leviticus 5:24, and several times in Numbers. Milgrom notes that the purpose of the census was for military conscription, and such censuses were frequent during the monarchy, as seen in 2 Samuel 24, verses 1 to 9, and 2 Chronicles 14:7. He further writes, this ancient institution was indispensable for any government levy upon persons or property. The census described here follows the same procedures and even uses the same terminology as those found earlier in Near Eastern cultures that had been intimately associated with Israel's origins. Thus, at the ancient Mesopotamian town of Mari, the Akkadian term for muster the troops is the exact cognate of the Hebrew pakad tzava. Similarly, the men of Mari were inscribed on a tablet and by name.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The community, clan, and families. In Hebrew, the Hebrew for community is edah, and as Ashley notes, the exact meaning of this word varies. In this verse, edah refers to the congregation of the whole of Israel, men, women, and children. In other cases, it refers to a group of Israelites who represent the whole people, like adult males, and seen in Numbers 14 verses 1 to 4, and tribal leaders, seen in Exodus 12 verses 3 and 21, and Numbers 8:7. Clans is a translation of mishpachot, and families, bet avotam, literally the houses of the fathers. According to Ashley, the latter refers to the nuclear family, mother, father, brothers, and sisters, whilst the former is a wider term and includes other blood relatives. He writes that both terms are tribal subdivisions, with the larger given first. Verse 3, 20 years old or more. So Milgrom comments, it is to be noted that no upper age is given. This is strange because such a limit is set for the Levites, as seen in 8 verses 24 to 26, and because later censuses in Israel are expressly limited to the military fit, as seen in 2 Samuel 24:9 and 2 Chronicles 14:7. One would also have expected, as exists in the Mari texts, a separate census of the aged, as well as of those physically incapacitated and unable to bear arms. The unusual nature of this census was probably caused by the fact that it was taken in preparation for achieving the overriding national goal, the conquest of the promised land. In critical wars, there was neither exemption nor retirement from military service. Verses 5 to 15. While it was previously thought that the names given here were an invention by a later writer, as Licht notes, Levine writes that several of the names were found in the Ammonite onomasticon of the 7th century BCE. For example, Aminadav, Netanel, and Elishama, including variations on the biblical names. He and Milgrom conclude that the list is more traditional than historical. Ashley, however, writes, From a literary perspective, it is very difficult to construct valid arguments for the date of a piece of literature in terms of vocabulary of any kind, especially proper names. Early names could be put into a late list by an editor. Furthermore, one can draw parallels only from the extant literature. What fraction of ancient Near Eastern literature has been discovered, and what fraction of what has been discovered has been deciphered? Nothing prohibits any of the names found in this list from appearing in a document of the late 2nd or early 1st millennium BCE, but there is also no proof that the list here is ancient. It is perhaps best to see the names as characters in the whole story of numbers and admitting ignorance on the date of these names. About verses 20 to 43. So Levine comments, the historical significance of the numerical totals listed here has often been exaggerated. We are dealing with a tradition that attributes great numbers to the wilderness Israelites. A sexagesimal system employing multiples of 60 is made to yield an overall total of approximately 600,000. In Exodus 12:37 and Numbers 11:21, J.E. speaks of the 600,000 ragli, foot soldiers, who marched out of Egypt, just as other fairly early sources mention armies consisting of thousands of foot soldiers, Judges 20:10 and 1 Samuel 4:10. The word elef in the census list must surely mean 1,000, because it alternates with me'ot, hundreds, and with other numbers. There is no basis for interpreting elef here as a designation of a social unit so as to render the totals more realistic. The text of numbers is usually military formula in the census record, in contradistinction to its earlier use of elef as a social term, as in verse 4 above. With a few minor discrepancies, the totals here are the same as those given in Numbers 2.
And and since you actually mentioned it, so yeah, we did talk in Exodus about the counting of the people and how one of the ideas was that it could mean like a unit, right? So instead of counting it as 600,000, it would be 600 units, and that would make it a little more realistic. But at the same time, yeah, it doesn't really line up with other parts where the exact term is used, where it very clearly means thousand. But yeah, that's the thing that we should keep in mind for the rest of it. That was the
base
other note
system. Sorry, I was just thinking the base 60 system being, one of the oldest counting systems, albeit somewhat more cumbersome, is something that has led to interesting numbers before. But I mean, during Exodus, we were discussing how they had roughly the same number of 600,000 men of war, which meant that you would have at the least 3 million people, which again are not going to go through any desert without leaving a mark, especially not for 40 years. Because
You talk about the earliest counting system. I thought the earliest counting system was one, a couple, a few, many, a lot.
See, I don't know. The thing is, I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know that some cultures still have that. Is the thing.
they do, yeah. I was referring to
the Perush, the Perush tribe. Yeah, they still have that. They had no God concept, and that's how they counted. Yeah.
The base 60. I was thinking of it was in cuneiform, right?
Mm-hmm.
The base 60 from which we got our,
Yes.
Where you had
our
to use
talk and
the
everything.
base is 60, and you can put a mark on it to make it 600, or put a different mark on it to reduce it to 6.
Okay, fair enough. But
So
yeah, that's a very antiquated system, and I mean an indication that many of these numbers may have been traditions that were not specific to the Jewish people too. So
Mistranslations.
before we get to number
I feel
2,
like
I
I'm
want-
wearing one of those like Shakespearean neck coifs.
Oh, a ruff? Yes, you have a ruff around your neck there.
very noble, sir.
I still have
You
two
look like a
comments
proper
on
Sir Francis Drake.
I still have 2 comments on numbers. So about verse 24 about God. Whereas Judah was 3rd and God was 11th in verses 5 to 15, God is now 3rd and Judah is 4th. In the Septuagint, however, God is in the 9th place after Benjamin with the sons of the concubines. Ashley suggests that the Septuagint translator was unsure of the criterion by which God had been moved from 11th place to 3rd. Chizkuni writes that God is placed 3rd since he was the firstborn of the maidservant of his mother, and hence considered one of her sons, as seen in Genesis 30 verses 3 and 6. Milgrom, citing Aunruf Kushke, adds a geographical reasoning. Gad's tribe was located close to that of Judah, Reuben, and Simeon, whereas Dan, Asher, and Naphtali were in the Galilee.
Cool.
I
And location of the land and not the location.
I
of
just
the-
noticed as we read through it how clearly it also indicates that Joseph and his entire story is a later added conceit. Because, I mean, you never hear him as the tribe of Joseph. It's always Ephraim and Manasseh, who were his sons, and each got their own tribe because something, shuffling, something. But, like, it's always tacked on like that. And it's very clearly, not from...
I feel like it'd be a lot of fun to do a video on that, on like the whole, like, the Joseph novella, because the thing is, it is kind of standout on its own. Like, it is its own, like, narrative unit. So like we talked about it before back when we were talking about Genesis, right? But yeah, I think it would be really cool to just do a video outlining all the evidence for it, because it's actually pretty massive.
It is, especially when you count the fact that it stands out in every single counting of the tribes in the whole thing, that they're like, sons of Joseph. You're like, it's,
I mean,
yeah.
the numbers
I'm going to read
are-
a couple of comments because they're on here for a while. So
Oh,
Q
oh.
Continuum says, "Hi all, is this the version with 10,000 and 100,000 for the same group of people?"
I don't know. There's a lot of those that happen in the Bible. I refer to that wonderful, what's that famous YouTube video on Bible contradictions where you have the little stick men?
Oh
Oh.
yeah,
Game show.
one's by non-stamp collector, right?
Non-stamp collector. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know. He goes through a lot of them, which is good because they're all over the place. Anywhere there's two accounts of a thing, they don't match up somewhere.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
somewhere.
Kicker White Lion offers 50 Czech kroner, thank you, and says, "So far into the Bible and we are just learning numbers. Starting to think this is a good science book if
It is not.
starting to think
not.
this is
Starting to
not a
think
good
this is
science
not
book
a good science book.
if
Aaron
math
says
is
that
this
the
far."
Bible is a good science book, confirmed.
Yeah. We're gonna quote that.
Yeah,
2
forever.
plus 2 equals 5. Everybody, don't forget that.
And pi is 3.
Right,
It's 3,
pi
yes.
is 3. Yeah.
That's right.
And then Minute Rice offers $6.66. It says, "Love your snake, Aaron. The classic boa colors are so pretty." Why, thank you.
And my final comment on this chapter, 48 to 54. So Avishur comment, Yitzhak Avishur comment. This section describes the appointment of the Levites over the tabernacle of testimony, and it includes the divine order and its execution. The order is long, detailed, and stretches over 6 out of the 7 verses in this section, but the execution is short, only 1 verse long. In this section, the writer expresses the importance of the matter, not only by a direct, visible description, but also in an indirect, hidden description, using a guiding word and repetition of words and phrases 3 and 7 times, which are the perfect numbers. The main subject of this passage is the tabernacle, and it is repeated in this short section 7 times to emphasize the importance of the matter. It should be noted that out of the 7 instances, the term tabernacle of testimony appears 3 times in verses 50 and 53. And that's it for numbers 1.
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting things here is that, so it says that you shouldn't be taking a census of the Levites, right? However, we do have a census of the Levites being conducted in Numbers 4. But notes that if Brett is, he should say that the most pressing critical problem is the census prohibition itself. As Bright observes, the prohibition seems on the face of it to have permanent validity and to have a basis for not including Levites in any census. But because it is actually listed, because they are listed in Numbers 4, if Bright is correct, then the possibility that the command of verse 49 is temporary has to be excluded. On the other hand, the author of Numbers must have found some way of understanding the problem. Perhaps he took the view that since the Levites are entirely separate from the lay tribes, they cannot be numbered as part of a lay census. That does not mean that they cannot be numbered on their own account in a clerical census. If Bright is correct, the problem could be solved by suggesting that the author has incorporated and partly partially rewritten some earlier Levitical tradition in verses 48 through 50, a suggestion which makes use of some of Kellerman's analytical findings. This would be broadly traceable to Deuteronomic levels in the tradition where the tribe of Levi exercised overall priestly responsibility. So if we consider the fact that you can be given over to the Levites, it would make kind of less sense to count that as like a tribe or a family in the sense like it's because you can
in the early form,
right,
in the early
because
form
you
of the
get
religion.
consecrated to them, right?
Although if there's also the possibility that because this was a military census counting from the age of 20 and not the age of 13 when boys reach the age of manhood as such, that then this also insinuates, at the very least, if not outright states, that Levites were exempt from military service. So not only do they get God's portion of everything, but they don't have to fight for it if they don't want to.
Yeah, I think they were omitted because they weren't soldiers. They weren't considered soldiers. In the military, all the words through Numbers 1 here is emphasizing this camp as being an encampment, a military encampment. There's order going on. We're about to go into this more detailed structure of this encampment.
Although it does seem like the thing they have to protect themselves from most is God, by getting the Levites to make a little circle around the tabernacle so he doesn't get mad and smite them like annoying little ants.
Well, they also serve another purpose, Lilith, and I want Peter to show a picture before we go into Numbers 2. Keep in mind that the word Levi, if I remember correctly, means to be joined, because I think some lady had a kid and named Levi, and it was a boy, and she goes, "Oh, I finally had a boy. Now my husband will stay joined to me, so I'll name him Levi." But anyway, so Levi, the Levites mean joined to. Pull this up, would you, Peter? There we go. So there's one presumption that you have to make, and that's that each military man and his family, in essence, would take up the same amount of space. I think if you can use the law of averages, we're dealing with really big numbers here, so I think it's okay to do that. And if you follow it to the T here in Numbers 2 coming up, it's not proof of anything, it's just noteworthy. It's in the shape of a cross, atheists. It's kind of cool.
Yeah,
If
because
it's
I mean,
not
who would have
proof of anything,
divided
why are you
anything
sharing
by,
it?
who
Sorry.
would have
It's not-
divided anything by north, south, east, or west? I mean, that would have been unheard of.
Yeah, the
But there's
points of the
another
compass.
presumption you're making there, which is that the camps are behind each other and not next to each other, which would make a lot more sense.
Right. Yeah.
Well, now, when in this case, though, they can be next to each other. At
No,
least
but-
the 3 camps within each four.
No,
where you
but
No.
you're putting them behind each other.
You're putting them out from, if you could take that down, Peter, you're putting them out from the tabernacle. Like the tabernacle is here and then you are here, and then next means over here. Whereas it may very well and would have made a lot more sense to have treated it like the points of a compass, where you're like, you're first here, and then you, and then you, and then to the east is this guy, and then you, and then you. And it would have made far more sense to have them encircling like the points of a compass. And I believe in the pre-show, Isaac said that that is how traditionally the Jewish people have drawn that arrangement.
And I will
Not
say,
just Jews.
I will
mean,
say
think
that
Probably
they-
everyone, yeah.
Then therefore we're not following what God requested to
Yes, they
according
were.
to this chapter. All I'm saying is, if there's
That's a
there's a
bold
few other
claim.
presumptions. One, that they actually did it, and as we can see, they weren't very good at doing stuff, following God's command.
That's
so,
not
who
what
knows?
God said, though.
But
He
that's
said,
great
and
that
then next.
then-
He didn't say further east you must be.
If you show, let me show you the there are 2 options that I've been able to defer. If you show the other 2 pictures, real quick, and then I'll get out of your guys.
Yeah, okay, so you have a picture of the other.
I have 2 to explain.
way.
Actually, this one won't quite work. And this is a lot smaller, by the way, than what it would be. Clearly, go to the next one. I guess I don't have a picture to explain it, but go to the next one, Peter.
Yeah.
This is the option. They can
This is
be
the more
this way,
traditional
or they could
version.
be or they could be one after the other. But
Yeah.
either way, it would still be in the shape of a cross. Otherwise, they would be northeast, southeast, or
Yeah. What's
Northwest.
wrong with being
Crosses
north and south?
exist.
Which
Crosses
would
exist
be-
in the world regardless, though. doesn't matter. I mean, it just happens to be this in this case.
It was more than just a cross. It's in the shape of a crucifix. Yeah, it's
Okay, no.
No.
It is what it is.
Oh, God, no.
Mhm.
Oh,
one of the
no,
main-
It is.
no.
That's
Yeah.
Wait, hold
This
on.
picture,
So the other picture, obviously
to
that was
the
set up in the
original,
shape of
Peter.
a cross.
Fine.
This one, however, I'm not really seeing crucifix.
Not
This is
to
what
mention,
I included this picture, and it's the encampment's got to be way bigger than this, by the way, because if
Well,
you notice, the
obviously, these
Levites
are
are a lot
beads.
smaller number than.
Right, and people are going to
Yeah.
fill up the corners before they go behind further away.
yeah, this would be far more reasonable if they were coming
Because
out
that would
like
be going
a
against what God
typically
says.
drawn. No, it wouldn't. It would be far more sensible if they were coming out like a sunbeam, each section coming out like a wedge of a pizza slice, if that makes more sense, because that's how actual people exist. They don't tend to just stand in squares rigidly, and
But this
it
is a
says
military
any
command.
military encampment in history is like that. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. That this is not realistic, because look at Chinese military encampment standards and how they used to do things too. That's
never
not
be
a
like that.
crucifix. Of course not. It'd be impractical.
And not to
I
mention the
actually-
fact that this was a military census, but not necessarily entirely a military encampment either.
Go back to the other one. This, Peter, would you the first one?
Right. So so there's three presumptions. One is that the numbers represent also are proportional to the total number. Two, that they camped out like in such a way to make that shape, and three, that these numbers of people, regardless of the actual ratios between these numbers, when geographically laid out on the ground, would take up the shape and size of the number of people, which is not necessarily true. You have, in the world, we have cities of different population numbers with completely different sizes, and the size of the city is not a one.
Well, this isn't New York
population.
versus the slums. They're all getting fed by manna, and
Right, but
they're
unless you
military-
sit
it's
there
military
rigidly and
encampment.
measure out every single tent needs to be
But-
exactly this distance from the other tent, the camp sizes are not going to represent.
We're on the same
number of
page.
people at all.
There are those presumptions, and I said that up front.
Yeah.
But honoring those presumptions, then the ideal vision of the encampment was in the shape of a crucifix.
Okay, so
I
You realize this whole thing,
Town.
Fine.
this whole thing just comes out as cool story, bro. You understand?
Yeah, if you presuppose
so
it was a
P-Town.
shape across,
It is what it is.
P-Town.
It's a good story, bro.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's say let's say that from your perspective it looks like a crucifix. Would it have looked like that to those people?
It would to some if you climbed up on a hill, or if
So
there's other
they would
aspects of the world,
recognize
you guys
the
have to go look at the
significance of a crucifix. They would, do you think?
Well, I think
I think the
P-Town
true
is saying
significance doesn't come until another 1400 years.
What I'm
later.
saying is
Jesus is on
there's
the
no
crucifix.
point in it
Yeah.
being there's no point that there's no symbolism here. There's nothing for those ancient people to go on. There's nothing for us to derive on it past tense.
It's
what-
called prophecy.
Great. Okay.
I
Aaron.
want
Yeah.
to be fair here. I want to be fair here. I think
and
what
the
P-Town is saying-
paleo symbol for covenant is also the shape of a cross. It's whatever.
I
but
actually
anyway.
I also prepared something for this, but when I'll get to the commentary, I'll then show it.
It's just an aspect of prophecy, just a one of thousands.
Although
of
this would be
examples.
a weird prophecy, but like this doesn't even look like a prophecy. It's not a prophetic work, but
It's not a prophecy. It's like so
the-
many things that Christians claim, as fulfilled prophecies that were never prophecies.
right, like
Because
in
what you
Psalms or
need-
something. Like if the Psalms were prophetic, their hit rate would be incredibly low. But the thing is, I want to fairly address what P-Town's claiming here, right? So like they would have went up, like if they went up on a hill, they would have seen this shape and not recognized its later significance, right? But they still would have seen the same shape of a crucifix, even though they would not have been like, oh, that's a crucifix. However, yes, the one big assumption that you are making is that they are standing like going away from the temple. They are one by one next to each other away from the temple instead of alongside the temple, which seems to make way more sense for a community to live in.
Well,
Like, going around like a clock makes more sense for these directions than the crucifix shape. Like,
Right.
I'm sorry, everybody. If you see an old-fashioned clock, for those of us who still remember how to tell time on a clock with a face,
You also have to remember
there's only
one last
there's only a few aspects that I use to define. For one, that it's kind of why there's 3 tribes within each section, right? And they stack on each other. Whether or not they stack from left to right or top from down, we don't know. It's not
They
specific,
don't
but it uses military words. And the only real precision would be if you had the encampment back up, I would show you. But if you would have the tribe of Judah is told to encamp in the direction towards the rising of the sun. Okay, and that's the only real, because on the horizon, even though the sun looks big to us, it's actually quite specific. It's not that big actually on our horizon. So to camp, when you have 190,000 people plus their kids, and you have to camp towards the rising of the sun, it's fairly precise. And then then you have to assume that the other ones did the same thing, which was do it in precision.
The east is named after the rising of the sun, but the east is not the point where the sun rises. The sun doesn't rise due east every day of the year.
That's fine. I'm just telling you we haven't gotten to it yet, but that's what it says in Numbers 2, going off my memory.
We should probably actually read Numbers 2 before we continue this argument.
I also want to point out one last thing, that in that picture you had, or in like the cross model, right? In the middle you have the tribe of Levi, and they are numbered, right? But we have to remember that there was a whole ass tabernacle there, that there was a whole ass building that was instead of more like a square, like if you're just doing it by numbers, it was definitely more like a rectangle. So like it would look very it wouldn't really align that well with that. Like, it'd be weird to have people like standing that way in the shape of a cross around a rectangle like that.
Well,
But
even keep in mind that you have 22,000 Levites. We'll come to find out, as you said in Numbers 4. So yeah, I would presume they'd probably be in the shape of maybe a rectangle, a square. Who knows? It's not specific enough to know.
I still take issue with
but
the
it's
fact
still
that
a
you're
much
saying
larger.
next
The shape
to
of the
means
building
further over.
becomes a little less relevant when you're dealing with this number of people, I think, Lawrence. I've thought about all of this for a long time, years ago, looked at the different view. And again, I want to emphasize, there's no proof of anything here. I just think it's funny that people fight me tooth and nail for it. It's a
because
possible.
it doesn't mean anything.
Because you're reading it into the text to support your own theological view.
And I'm not reading anything into it.
That is
Yes,
reading
you
something
are.
into it. Making
It's very
it
much
sound
are.
is
Numbers.
reading something
It's
into
numbers, guys.
It's interesting. It's an interesting case of pareidolia.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
it
is an
is.
interesting
It
It
case of
very is a case of
pareidolia.
paradox. Exactly right.
Okay, let's do
I feel,
chapter 2.
P10,
Oh,
sorry,
you're
you're
finished?
just wrong
Sorry.
about this.
Not wrong.
I'm seeing.
Very
You
wrong.
obviously are.
I'm seeing
Oh,
comments
chat-
piling up. Maybe we should start
comments.
reading them before we get to Numbers 2.
Okay. So Trevor and Wright says, isn't Hades, being the Greek version of hell, totally unrelated to Sheol mentioned in the Tanakh, right? I mean, doesn't Sheol in Hebrew simply mean the state or abode of the dead? But no, Sheol and Hades are practically the same thing. They're based on the same idea.
No, they're not exactly.
No,
No,
they're not. No,
they're
it is.
not exactly
You
the same.
you didn't have like what the Zoroastrians taught, that you would have a kingdom of the lie and a kingdom of justice and truth. You had one place for the dead to go.
But
both
Hades is
in-
not
in-
really a place; it's a god, right?
Well, no, Hades
No,
is
Yeah,
also a place.
both.
It's both. It's both.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
don't think
So I
there
mean,
was-
in
there was
both
entity called Sheol.
in both Judaism and Hellenism, you have one land of the dead that everybody went to be dead.
Well, there was also the plains of Asphodel.
Right, but the thing is, I
I'm
think
not dead.
things still happen in Hades.
Yeah.
In
People
Greek
were
myth.
punished, some of them, Sisyphus.
I mean, Hades climbed out of it.
Yeah, I
So-
think Hades is more like
Hercules, excuse me.
the
There it is.
Tehom, the deep, which is mentioned
Yeah,
but
yeah,
not
that
really
makes more
expounded
sense,
on. And Sheol is more the grave. like the physical location where the body is after you die.
Yeah.
And then that kind of got expanded to,
Okay, but like I said,
Right,
it's
so-
not like what the Zoroastrians proposed, with there being two kingdoms for people to go to, like the heaven and hell concept, where Christians get their idea of heaven and hell.
Okay, so yeah, it's not the good bad binary in the same way. So
Yeah, it's
that-
everybody
in that way
dead
it's
goes
the
to the same place.
Everybody is dead, Dave.
I mean, Judaism
Thank you
does
for that
have
reference.
an idea of like, an afterlife, which is, not the same as the biblical Sheol. It's more akin to the Christian heaven. Hell, not
It's supposed
not
to be
really,
a new,
nothing like hell, really.
like a new heaven and a new earth kind of thing. Like that's why we have that's why texts like I forget which one it was in Ezekiel, the whole Valley of Dry Bones things. That's why that was later interpreted to be like this prophetic thing about the day of judgment and everyone returning, even though the part in Ezekiel is not about that. But they very clearly later on believe that they will have a kind of resurrection and
Yeah.
the earth will be like made brand new. And but
Yeah,
that
the
was-
resurrection of the dead is a fundamental Jewish belief, I think.
right, yeah.
That when the Messiah comes, everyone will come back to life. And
Yeah, and I want to read the next comment. Sylvia George Pantalemon says, for P-Town, why would God promote a torture device on which not only Jesus died, but thousands of other people, some innocent, assuming that was the shape of Jesus's cross? And then if we want to leave that for a moment,
Well,
Truthful Serpent,
okay.
well, it's the same question basically from two different people. Truthful Serpent says, P-Town, why would God make them sit out there in the formation of a cross? Nobody from that time would still be alive when Jesus was crucified to be like, oh, that's what that meant.
Well, first, they didn't always just sit there. They kind of marched around in the shape of a cross. But yeah, well, I think it's profound that, well, first of all, Jesus on the cross wasn't a tragedy. It was an achievement, the greatest achievement of all time to date. And
Except no, it
Some-
wasn't.
Torture device.
That's a
And-
new one.
but the Catholics
And I
blame
think-
the Jews for it.
and
hundreds of
Sylvia
years.
George and Truthful Serpent, this is why atheists are going to throw a fit tooth and nail, even though the numbers are here and the description is simple, is because describing the shape of a crucifix 1,200 years before crucifixion was invented is significant, especially when
it
it comes
isn't.
to
It's only
Jesus.
significant
Yeah,
if
that's the
it's
problem.
true.
And your achievement was a failure. It's how you spin it after the fact, especially
No.
when there wasn't really a fact.
No, there's a book
By the
called
way,
the Bible.
And by the
use
way,
of
crucifixion has
Demonstrate
actually been
copy.
utilized in multiple different parts of the world throughout the ages by different cultures and different societies. And also, the most practical one was an X. We actually have proof of this, not a cross that was sticking out of the ground, because it'd be impractical. It would not be possible for it to hang in like that very simply and easily. And so they didn't bother because soldiers were lazy and wanted to get home to their dinners. And so that's the fact of it all. So yeah, it's just not correct.
Anyway,
It's-
as we're
I
going to
think-
read, there's numbers. It's a military encampment, one and then the other, which directions they're allowed to camp, and it's in the shape of a cross, assuming that each person takes up the same amount of space. There's
Right.
some
again-
Which that means nothing, and your other interpretation means that doesn't mean what you think it does. And so, if you make enough false assumptions, you can get to your entire belief system.
It's
You
yeah,
kind
I-
of have to have your heart unhardened a little bit for you to see the grand scheme of things.
Oh, I love
I guess
that
maybe
line.
that's just just to tie it back
Gullibility.
to Exodus. I guess maybe
Are we going to read?
maybe
have to
there's an
remember,
aspect of
We
that.
should.
record,
we should read.
It's
We're
good to be
not fighting-
open-minded.
the idea of the cross. We're fighting the dishonesty of the thought process that leads you
Yeah.
to draw such significance to the use of the 4 points of the compass in the laying out of a camp, which is really the only solid thing in this that is in the shape of a cross or an X at all. And so it's, it doesn't say that next means along further away from the tabernacle. It doesn't say, it says then, which could absolutely mean points of the compass or clock or anything else. It's not specific. It's the fact that you're striving so hard to make it significant, which we find dishonest. And we don't like dishonesty.
No,
That's
it's
why
the
we're atheists.
precision. If I had 30 minutes, I can talk about the precision of it. But anyway, let us
Precision?
blaspheme. Yeah, there's precision in Numbers 2 that you can use to deduce the higher probability that it would be in the
Well,
ship.
why don't we read
Of course,
it?
I don't know why you guys fight so tooth and nail over this when you don't believe any of this at all. But
Because
this
we
is so
want people-
offensive.
In fact-
so offensive to you.
In fact, no,
Just
I
wait
think
to say that it's a possibility.
I didn't say it's
possibilities-
impossible. I said
That's
you
one.
could. You're absolutely right. It looks like a cross. Okay, let's give you that. That means nothing. There's no reason that a god would have said, "Oh, you know what'll be clever? Let me make this look like a cross." And then many years later, there's somebody in some trailer park somewhere will say, "Hey, that looks like a cross. I think that's significant," where no scholar does.
Coincidences exist, and not just that, but military practices exist too.
Saying
So
saying
the
it's a
smartness of
possibility.
this thing is not correct. It just
Saying it's
it's-
a possibility is one thing. Like, that's fine. You can
Yeah.
say it's a possibility. Like, I don't even think anyone would have gotten mad at you if you said it was a possibility. But when you're like, no, this is the way it is, when it is kind of clear that you're reading that into the text because of your theological background, like, that is I think you're doing a disservice to the Bible. I think
No, Lawrence. Like if we went,
I agree with Lawrence.
no,
I do too.
absolutely not.
You are doing a
'cause-
disservice to the
No,
Bible
I'm
because
going-
you're putting
if-
your
if you
understanding of it
study it-
ahead of the actual text.
If you look at Numbers 2, and I'll leave for you guys because this is silly, but if you go and you actually really do the amount of work that I put into this, you'll
Oh,
see
wait.
the higher
You're
probability
telling
that it's
Lawrence?
describing it.
You're telling Lawrence to do the amount of work you've done?
well, into this one specific.
We could do
thing.
Lawrence and I could do it together sometime. It's fine, but yeah, it's.
Please read.
Hold on, let him
We
finish
should
his thought.
actually read the
want,
text.
no,
We
I
We
let
we
him
just
finish his
finished.
thought, please.
we do
He
still
has to say, and
have
then we'll finish it up.
we
Go
do
ahead,
still
please,
have
Peter.
Tomer's picks. Do you want to show those
Yeah.
now, Tomer, or
When I'll get to my commentary, I'll then show it.
okay?
Well, you know
Let's
what?
Why
Peter,
don't
I'll
you
do
show
it
them
because it
now?
is- If
Then
they-
now.
Later.
All right, fine.
Be patient.
The Lord
people.
said to Moses,
Wait.
and Aaron,
I want.
Wait,
I want
guys. Hold
I
on.
want
I
to-
want to finish what P-Town said, please, and then we'll end
Okay,
it. on
okay,
that.
I'll-
Please
I'll
finish
shut
what you
up,
said,
I'll shut
P-Town. Out of fairness,
Oh,
please.
I can't remember what it was now. It's okay.
Oh,
I
sorry
think
about
I'll
that.
read this because the Hebrew names, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Still, we
Peton
There are
cannot
Hebrew
remember
names.
because the Lord hardened his head.
have. Okay.
Okay, go.
Wow.
Tomer.
Okay.
Savage.
The linear congruence AX equivalent to B modulo N has a solution. Oh wait, that's a different book of numbers. Okay.
Well done. Well
Well
done.
done. Yeah. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "The Israelites shall camp each with his standard under the banners of their ancestral house. They shall camp around the tent of meeting at a distance. Camped on the front or east side, the standard of the division of Judah, troop by troop. Chieftains of the Judites, Nachshon, son of Aminadav. His troop, as enrolled, 74,600. Camping next to it, the tribe of Issachar, chieftain of the Issacharites, Netanel, son of Tsual. His troop, as enrolled, 54,400. The tribe of Zebulun, chieftain of the Zebulunites, Eliav, son of Chelon. His troop, as enrolled, 57,400. The total enrolled in the division of Judah are 186,400 for all troops. These shall march first. On the south, the standard of the division of Reuven, troop by troop. Chieftain of the Reubenites, Elitzur, son of Shteur. His troop, as enrolled, 46,500. Camping next to it, the tribe of Shimon, chieftain of the Simeonites, Shelumiel, son of Tsurishadai. His troop, as enrolled, 59,300. And the tribe of Gad, chieftain of the Gadites, Eliasaph, son of Reuel. His troop, as enrolled, 54,650.
45.
45,650. The total enrolled in the division of Reuben, 151,450 for all troops. These shall march second. Then, midway between the divisions, the tent of meeting, the division of the Levites, shall move as they camp, so they shall march each in position by their standards. On the west, the standard of the division of Ephraim, troop by troop. Chieftain of the Ephraimites, Elishama son of Amihud. His troop, as enrolled, 40,500. Next to it, the tribe of Menashe. Chieftain of the Manassites, Gamliel son of Pedatsur. His troop, as enrolled, 32,200. And the tribe of Benjamin, chieftain of the Benjaminites, Avidan son of Gidoni. His troop, as enrolled, 35,400. The total enrolled in the division of Ephraim, 108,100 for all troops. These shall march third. On the north, the standard of the division of Dan, troop by troop, chieftains of the Danites, Achiezer son of Amishadai. His troop, as enrolled, 62,700. Camping next to it, the tribe of Asher, chieftain of the Asherites, Pagiel son of Ochran. His troop, as enrolled, 41,500. And the tribe of Naphtali, chieftain of the Naphtalites, Achira son of Einan. His troop, as enrolled, 53,400. The total enrolled in the division of Dan, 157,600. These shall march last by their standards. Those are the enrollments of the Israelites by ancestral houses. The total enrolled in the divisions for all troops, 603,550. The Levites, however, were not recorded among the Israelites as the Lord had commanded Moses. The Israelites did accordingly, just as the Lord had commanded Moses, so they camped by their standards, and so they marched, each with his clan according to his ancestral house.
You have 4 separate encampments, 3 divisions within those encampments each. We don't know in what order, but those were connected. Those 3 within each 4 were connected. What connects the other 4 are the Levites, which mean to be joined to. And each one of these divisions, it says, goes towards the 4 cardinal directions. Specifically, the first one goes towards the east, towards the rising of the sun. Look, it's just, and then when you do the numbers, assuming each person, and again, there's an assumption here, they take up their space, then it's in the shape of a crucifix. And I know it just pierces the heart of all the atheists watching, but
Well,
it is what it is. It's numbers.
Because
No,
assumptions
it doesn't.
are
It's
pointless
you
because
trying
they
to
make an
pretend
ass
that
and
it
a you
means
out of
something.
me.
P-Town. It's like, whoo, it's the cross. That's so important. But it's not. It's the simplest fucking geometric structure. It's gonna happen on occasion. It probably didn't happen this time, but even if it did, it wouldn't mean shit. It's the prophecy. Except that it's not. There's no
Like every
prophecy.
time a building falls
You're
down or is
suffering
bombed.
cranial rectal inversion. Cure yourself.
This is every time a building is collapsed or is bombed or anything else, somewhere there's a cross in the middle. Because you know what? Architecture uses interlacing structures, which somewhere, some broken piece will form something that looks like a cross. It's statistically almost necessary. So, yay, magic Jesus.
Yeah, also, and as we just read, it says that the 4 camps went in order: first, second, tabernacle, third, last.
In terms of their
So
marching.
either they were in a column
marching,
or in an X, because if east and south go before,
Yeah,
first,
that sounds again much
and then
more
it's
like
tabernacle, and then north and west,
a grid pattern of 9 with
Yeah.
the Levites at the center. I mean, not, but think visually if you had like a grid pattern.
Well, I mean, it says like the east side
I think
goes
Isaac's
first, and then
referring
the
to when
south
they're
goes
marching,
second.
like the order.
Okay, so now Truthful Serpent says if this God of
Again,
yours
Truthful
actually
Serpent.
existed, P-Town, this book wouldn't even exist. An actual God would just appear to us and just talk to us like ordinary people do with each other every day.
To be fair, that also makes assumptions about deities, but we are not in a position in terms of historical analysis, we are not in a position to make assumptions about what a god would and would not do necessarily.
I mean, it depends on the god being attributed.
Right, yeah. But so I don't know if I agree with that statement, but still, like, yeah, you already readily admit that yes, you make certain assumptions for it to get to that model. And like I said,
One
it
one
is fine.
primary, yeah.
It is fine to say that it is a possibility. That I think we would all allow. We wouldn't
Yep.
have an issue with you saying it's a possibility.
Sure.
Your conviction that it was in fact in the shape of a cross is what is doing a disservice to not just the text, but all the work that has been done on it. Like,
Well, let me take a chance to clarify. I don't know. I don't know what shape it was in. I think that the more it's the way I take the Bible, all aspects of it, all the challenging parts, and I'm going to interpret and take all the heat. It's my honest opinion that the precise interpretation of Numbers 1 and 2 is that this encampment was in the shape of a cross, and I mean that honestly. Now I'm
Okay.
talking about whether or not they actually did it. I don't know, but the actual numbers and what's being described, and it says in Numbers 1 that Moses did all that, emphasizes all of what was commanded of him. I do, and it's not even that significant to me, honestly, in the scope of everything. It's just a good example of how not just atheists but Muslims just throw a fit when I bring this up.
That's actually the part
Even though
that's
they haven't
annoying.
studied it, even though they haven't studied
The fact that
Lie
you think
outright,
that
like crazy,
you think
because
that
it
your
just pierces
baseless
their hearts,
assumption
Aaron.
the
Just
the
like,
fact that
ugh.
you think that your baseless assumption stabs into our heart. No, you're jumping to conclusions that have no merit.
This you haven't gone to
That's
the
it.
Aaron. You haven't looked
It
at
could be in the shape of a cross,
day
and
on
it
this
wouldn't have any
chapter.
significance. It's damn sure doesn't have any prophetic significance, so it's not something to even discuss. Okay, it was in a shape.
If 3 million
It's
people
according to you, it's
marched
in the shape of
around
a
in the
cross.
shape of
So
a cross
what?
for 40 years,
Right, which
the
wouldn't
Savior
mean
of
dick.
all mankind was nailed to a cross 1400 years later. I think that's
No.
the odds.
Except that
No.
it wasn't
Jewish
1400.
rabbis
Except that
put
no
together
part of anything you
calculating
just said
this.
is correct.
Calculate the
New
odds for us.
Continuum says, "Why is the Ankh in the shape of a cross?"
I can actually answer that. That one's an easy
it's
one. There's a
fucking
different
tough.
aspect to the brain, or sorry, the soul itself.
Very good.
Sorry. Anyway, so
Yeah,
the
I have
whole
an
Ankh
aunt
itself,
sitting
the reason why it
right
has
next
as
to
a
me. That's not
cross
weird at
is
all.
because of the symbol of life. It's also the idea of a mirror and concept of looking and reflection upon yourself and the branches of the human. That's why it's in the shape of a cross. And that's
then
used
John-
as also a feminine
Same
symbol
with
too,
limbs?
possibly. Not
And then
wings, but
John
it's also
73
symbol
John.
of eternity right here.
yeah.
John
Basically.
73 John says, "For P-Town, by your reasoning, most power poles, road signs, and beams in my house are holy. Are they prophecies too?"
It's just as silly as like Orthodox.
I'll tell you what, AT&T put up all those telephone
Yes.
poles. All those telephone poles look like crosses. The AT&T, what is a T&T? Well, those are two crosses, right?
I'm going to give.
And what's
You're
it's,
comparing.
hey, so that's got to be God, right? It's the Alpha.
comparing
Whoa,
the
look,
most
it's
popular
I'm going to
book
give P-Town.
written of all time.
Yeah, it's
I'm
and you
writing-
know what? It's a good marketing
describing
campaign.
Some of the most popular people of all time who marched in the shape of a cross to
Popularism.
the pole.
They
looking
didn't
at right
march
now
in the
outside
shape of a cross. If
are
there
in-
was
and
a
you-
cross at all, they camped in something vaguely resembling it if you squint.
Also, I would
Now,
like
P-Town, I was going to give you a
pass.
pass. Well, I was going to give him some credit here, real quick. Okay, you said earlier that you don't know about this. That was the truest thing that you said so far, and I would actually applaud you for that, because not knowing something is the first step towards wisdom, because you can seek towards trying to figure out what things are. So I was actually going to give you some credit there for that. And I think that saying that, not knowing, coming to your conclusion, okay, well, if you have a conclusion, then you have to support your conclusion. Now, you've been trying to do that, but the fact is what you're doing is making things that are coincidental or anti-military standards, which we know for a fact is just not practical to have a cross symbol like that for a lot of different facts, includes, if chariots, for example, were to come through, they would crush the center of the line. It's just not practical. Now, there's other factors too that are what you're saying, and so I'm honestly giving you some credit here on this. You have done research on this, but you've come up with incorrect conclusions because of them. And I'm saying incorrect because we've established other opportunities to show you how your argument can fall apart. That's called falsifiability. You understand that?
And then there's the 1400 years later
So-
thing, because we know that even if this happened,
I
it
think that was a
didn't happen
throwaway.
1400 years earlier.
Yeah, it was a throwaway. But the
Yeah.
I would like to say that this formation has more in common with the density distribution of a loaded die than it does a cross.
Yeah, it does. I can see that. I can very much see that.
Then
It's-
M. Doug says, it sounds like a standard military formation. The Zulus used something similar. Ox head.
Oh yeah,
that's
the
like-
Zulu.
Ox head formation. That's right.
The horns of the ox. Oh God,
Yeah.
I love that one. That's so cool.
Yeah, so if it
Then
was an
Trevor
X
and
shape
Wright.
and it was moving this way, then it might be.
In the Boer Wars. Very good.
Then Trevor and Wright says, what was the purpose of the 4 camps, of all of them being mentioned according to the amount in connection to each tribe? Was it to make them appear as an invincible army?
Well, I mean, this is so you're taking a census of your military, right? So this,
Right.
if you're talking about, if you're going into a narrative about a conquest, which obviously once we get to Joshua, that's what's going to happen. So yeah,
Can
like
scare the crap out of people.
it would be a
Assuming the book's true, of course. God forbid we do
Sure.
that.
right.
No,
ass-
if you assume the
assuming
book is true, then that would be very terrifying. You're right.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
what
God can forbid whatever he wants. Are going to do it anyway.
Yeah, they're both taking a record of
There's that too.
their people and their military power as an army. Yeah, maybe not as invincible, because like there were certainly they they certainly would receive their fair share of losses.
Well, I disagree, because these people lived in the desert sands and they ride single file to hide their numbers.
Your thought was coarse and rough and got everywhere.
I still my commentary to start.
God mercy.
Yes, that's right. That's my commentary. So verse 2, the standard in Hebrew it's diglo from degel. This word appears only in this chapter, in chapter 10 verses 11 to 28, and Song of Songs 2:4. According to Licht, degel here means the largest army unit, based on its usage in texts like the Dead Sea Scrolls, Elephantine Papyri, and the early translations. He notes, however, that the Akkadian verb dagalu means to look, and perhaps in biblical Hebrew the term degel originally meant banner or ensign, and later meant an army unit. And degel in modern Hebrew is a flag as well. About the banners, the Hebrew it's otot, and Milgrom comments, Hebrew ot is used for a fire signal in the Lachish letters 410. Here it means that each household has its distinctive insignia. According to Numbers Rabbah 2:7, based on Exodus 39:14, each tribe had a banner bearing the same color as its corresponding stone on the high priest's breastplate. And according to the War Scroll of the Dead Sea sectarians, each unit of 3 tribes, down to the smallest unit, whether a myriad, 1,000, 100, 50, or 10, had its own standard. End quote. Licht notes that Targum's Pseudo-Jonathan adds expansive information regarding the colors, signs, and symbols of the banners. For example, this is how it describes the banner of the camp of Judah. Quote, his standard shall be of silk of 3 colors, corresponding with those of the precious stones which are in the breastplate, sardius, topaz, and emerald. And upon it shall be expressed and set forth the names of the 3 tribes of Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. And in the midst shall be written, arise, O Lord, and let thine enemies be scattered, and thine adversaries be driven away before thee. And upon it shall be set forth the figure of a young lion. Verse 3, on the east toward the sunrise. So Ashley comments, the east side is the natural place to begin because that is the side in which the opening into the tabernacle was placed, and thus the way into the presence of God. The east was generally the primary direction in the ancient Near East. Since it is the direction of the rising sun, it is usually called the front, kedem, or the direction of the dawn, mizrach. From this basic and common eastward orientation, one would proceed to one's right hand, the south, one's back, the west, and one's left hand, the north. This is the pattern of chapter 2. And Peter, can you please show the picture? So this is the formation that is given on Numbers 2. Now, this is looking towards the north. But as Ashley notes, actually the east is the primary direction. So if we rotate it counterclockwise, to the eastern direction. Peter, can you please move to the next picture?
Wait, just a second. Oh snap, snap, snap. Oh snap.
Peter.
Snap.
Peter.
Kind of looks like a cross.
Yes. So,
Yeah, because he used.
I need an
literally
expert on
used
this.
it.
Aaron, can you please tell me what
Yes.
shape this is?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring this up
Pull out your
before.
death metal, man.
Hail Satan!
So,
Hail
you see,
Satan!
Yeah.
I believe. Aaron,
Golly.
what shape is this exactly?
He
Can
might
please tell me?
melt.
That would be
Oh,
an
it's so
inverted
funny.
cross.
Exactly.
Oh,
and
it's
and
so
what
funny.
type of figure would you say, or character is mostly represented by an inverted cross, as we know of today?
Would it be Satan?
Exactly. So you see, I
my God.
believe that
Numbers,
Satan.
very, very well argued, Tomer. Numbers is demonic.
Mwah!
Yes, I believe.
Beautiful.
I believe. That
Oh,
Satan
this
gave
is
us this-
demonic. That's why it's so torturous to get through it. Makes
That's-
So
perfect
it
sense
is
now.
a prophecy that Christianity is bullshit. And
I
God was
believe-
forewarning the Jews
Oh,
long
yeah.
in advance.
I believe that Satan gives us these little hints, if you say, some little signatures to indicate to us that he is the actual author of the Bible.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow.
Gnosticism.
Sorry,
That
P-Town.
makes
This
that
was a
makes
trap.
complete sense.
This was a trap.
It's a trap.
So I'm glad I didn't mention this possibility because with the images it makes it look much better.
Well,
Thank you, Peter.
Well,
Tomer, you have to explain why the east is upwards. There's a reason for that.
He,
oh,
he
he
did.
mentioned that.
He
Yes,
did.
because that's
He
the
did.
They
front.
watch first.
Yeah,
I
and
mentioned the
actually,
fact-
early maps were drawn. Some of the earliest maps were drawn with east at the top.
Yeah.
The idea of putting north at the
So-
top with a European idea.
Yeah, was it? I think it
Tomer,
may.
Tomer,
is
you're
a-
a legend.
I think even in the Babylonian map of the world, I'm looking it up and making sure.
I mean,
I
there's a
think I
map
know
of
what you're
Italy
talking
with
about,
east at the north,
Lawrence.
east at the top.
Tomer, I'm giving you a
Is he
big
at the top?
kiss from the other side of the world. Mwah.
Thank you. You can remove the picture, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now about verse.
we
14,
had
that,
two more. Didn't you want to show those?
No, that's for numbers 3.
Ah, okay.
Ah, yes, we'll see if we get there. What time
Yeah.
is it?
Verse 14, Deuel. The KJV reads Reuel, while the Masoretic text reads Reuel as well. Septuagint, Vulgate, and Samaritan text and other Hebrew manuscripts read Deuel. This confusion is based on the similarity between the letters Dalet and Resh in Hebrew. Ashley and Milgrom read it as Deuel, which is basically, I would say that it's a scribal error, perhaps, from the Masoretic
That's
text.
possible.
Verse 25.
Infallible word of God.
Verse 25 about Dan. So Milgrom comments, Dan was made head of its division because he was the firstborn of all of Jacob's children from his concubines, seen in Genesis 30 verses 1 to 13. Moreover, Dan stood out among the tribes because it provided the hero judge Samson in Judges 13 to 16. Its sanctuary was staffed by a priestly line descended from Moses in Judges 18:30, and it was noted for 2 of its artisans, who designed the wilderness tabernacle in Exodus 31:6 and Solomon's temple, 2 Chronicles 2 verses 12 to 13. And finally, verse 32, these are the Israelites. I like Ibn Ezra's comment here. When they journeyed on the 20th day of the second month, according to Numbers 10:11, they were the same number as on the day that they were counted on the first day of the second month in Numbers 1:1. Thus, not one of them died in 20 days. This is a great wonder.
Objection. People have birthdays. People have birthdays. People become 20 within 20 days. There would have been more people that had become 20. And people
Well,
would have
maybe
so-
20 days is close enough that you might. Well, no, not in a quantity of this many people, but
Yeah.
What if there was like a dry spell with the females, man? Come on.
What if they had a mating season that was very strict?
Yes.
oh, we are
Maybe
not
they-
doing a megaverse shit.
I just
Oh,
checked
maybe
by
they-
the way. I just checked by the way, and the Babylonian map of the world actually is oriented with the west being on top. Interestingly,
Interesting.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, Babylon.
we have other maps though. Like
Yeah, I think East on the top was one of the most
Babylonian,
popular
we're
ones
talking about.
before.
That's
North,
interesting.
whichever.
I recall the one for the East as well, Lawrence. So
Well, this one
that-
specifically starts with the East It's very explicit in the text, and we should
It's
let the
even called
text
the
interpret
front.
itself.
It's called the front as well. It's
Yeah, the
like,
front,
east
yeah.
is also known as
Kedem.
Kedem,
Kidma, which means front.
which means
Yeah.
front, going forward.
Yeah.
David Muir says, Tomer, thank you for all the research that you do. It is not only interesting, but it also helps explain this book better.
Thank you very much. I do this for other people's entertainment. If people enjoy my commentary, then I'm satisfied.
Oh, here I thought you did for the fat stacks.
No. I wish.
No, he does it for the ladies.
No.
I didn't see what kind of fat stacks I was talking about.
Eh. Okay, numbers 3.
Yes.
Are we
yes.
moving to number
oh,
3?
Gosh, I don't know. I might throw in the towel. I'm at the in-laws.
How long is? Oh,
I don't think
Yeah.
it gets kind of boring.
I can read it. I don't mind.
20 past. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
let me do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
yes.
This is the account of the family of Aaron and Moses at the time when the Lord spoke to Moses on the Mount Sinai. The names of the sons of Aaron were Nadab, the firstborn of Abihu, and Eleazar and Ithamar.
Yeah, he's not the firstborn of Abihu. Abihu is the next one. It's
The
just
firstborn.
Aaron.
Those
and
were the
Aaron.
names. Those were the names of Aaron's sons, the anointed priests who were ordained to serve as priests. Nadab and Abihu, however, died before the Lord, and they made an offering with unauthorized fire before him in the desert of Sinai. They had no sons, so Eleazar and Ithamar served as priests during the lifetime of their father Aaron. The Lord said to Moses, "Bring the tribe of Levi and present them to Aaron the priest to assist him. They are to perform duties for him and the whole community at the tent of meeting by doing the work of the tabernacle. They are to take care of all the furnishings of the tent of meeting, fulfilling the obligations of the Israelites by doing the work of the tabernacle. Give the Levites to Aaron and his sons. They are Israelites who were to be given wholly to him. Appoint Aaron and his sons to serve as priests. Anyone else who approaches the sanctuary is to be put to death." The Lord also said to Moses, "I have taken the Levites from among the Israelites in place of the first male offspring of every Israelite woman. The Levites are mine, for all the firstborn are mine. When I struck down all the firstborn of Egypt, I set apart for myself every firstborn of Israel, whether human or animal. They are to be mine. I am the Lord." The Lord said to Moses in the desert of Sinai, "Count the Levites by their families and clans. Count every male a month old or more." So Moses counted them, and he was commanded by the Lord. The word of the Lord. These are the names of the sons of Levi: Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Merari. I like that one.
Merari.
Okay. These are the names of the Gershonite clans: Lebni and Shimi. And the Kohathite clans: Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uziel. The Meritite clans, Merarite clans:
Merarite.
Mali and Mushi. Mushi. My favorite one is Mushi. These are the Levite clans according to their families. To Gershon belonged the clan of the Libnites and Shibeites. These were the... I can't do this, Tomer. You're going to have to take over.
Oh God.
Verse
Or
21.
Shibeites?
I cannot manage these names. But before we go any further, I got to say, we have yet another declaration from God that he's demanding human sacrifice.
Actually, no. And I can definitely say this because even Heath Duro says that he doesn't talk about child sacrifice.
Yeah, this is not a sacrifice thing.
Yeah.
here.
Literally saying that the
Sure.
Levites are
Seems to
Yes,
replacing
I am
the
absolutely
firstborn.
sure. And I can even quote Duro for you later on.
God has other uses
least
for
not
people
here.
besides burning them.
Yeah, but in the covenant code, I will argue against it, but it's not relevant here. So,
Okay.
verse 21. To Gershon belonged the clan of the Libnites and the clan of the Shemites. Those were the clans of the Gershonites. The record entries of all their males from the age of 1 month up, as recorded, came to 7,500. The clans of the Gershonites were to camp behind the tabernacle to the west. The chieftain of the ancestral house of the Gershonites was Eliasaph, son of Lael. The duties of the Gershonites in the tent of meeting comprised the tabernacle, the tent, its covering, and the screen for the entrance of the tent of meeting. The hangings of the enclosure, the screen for the entrance of the enclosure which surrounds the tabernacle, the cords thereof, and the altar, all the service connected with these. To Kohath belonged the clan of the Amramites, and the clan of the Yitzharites, and the clan of the Hebronites, and the clan of the Uzzielites. Those were the clans of the Kohathites. All the listed males from the age of 1 month up came to 8,600, attending to the duties of the sanctuary. The clans of the Kohathites were to camp along the south side of the tabernacle. The chieftain of this ancestral house of the Kohathite clans was Elitzaphan, son of Uzziel. Their duties comprised the ark, the table, the lampstand, the altars, and the sacred utensils that were used with them, and the screen, all the service connected with these. The head chieftain of the Levites was Eleazar, son of Aharon, the priest, in charge of those attending to the duties of the sanctuary. To Merari belonged the clans of the Machalites and the clan of the Mushites. Those were the clans of the Merari. The recorded entries of all their males up from the age of 1 month up came to 6,200. The chieftain of the ancestral house of the clan of Merari was Suriel, son of Avichail. They were to camp along the north side of the tabernacle. The assigned duties of the Merarites comprised the planks of the tabernacle, its bars, posts, and sockets, and all its furnishings, all the service connected with these. Also, the posts round the enclosure and their sockets, pegs, and cords. Those who were to camp before the tabernacle, in front, before the tent of meeting, on the east, were Moshe and Aaron and his sons, attending to the duties of the sanctuary as a duty on behalf of the Israelites, and any outsider who encroached was to be put to death. All the Levites who were recorded, whom at the Lord's command Moses and Aaron recorded by their clans, all the males from the age of 1 month up came to 22,000. The Lord said to Moses, record every firstborn male of the Israelite people from the age of 1 month up, and make a list of their names. And take the Levites for me, the Lord, in place of every firstborn among the Israelite people, and the cattle of the Levites in place of every firstborn among the cattle of the Israelites. So Moses recorded all of the firstborn among the Israelites, as the Lord had commanded him. All the firstborn males, as listed by name, recorded from the age of 1 month up, came to 22,273. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the Levites in place of all the firstborn among the Israelite people, and the cattle of the Levites in place of their cattle, and the Levites shall be mine, the Lord's. And as the redemption price of the 273 Israelite firstborn over and above the number of the Levites, take 5 shekels per head. Take this by the sanctuary weight, 20 gerahs to the shekel, and give the money to Aaron and his sons as the redemption price for those who are in excess. So Moses took the redemption money from those over and above the ones redeemed by the Levites. He took the money from the firstborn of the Israelites, 1,365 sanctuary shekels. And Moses gave the redemption money to Aaron and his sons to the Lord's bidding, as the Lord had commanded Moses.
No, the
This
one
is the source of the tradition of Jewish people to redeem their firstborn sons by giving 5 shekels of silver to a Levite.
Okay, so your firstborn son, you got to pay. You basically pay an offering. Yeah. What about a firstborn daughter?
Who needs
so-
those?
Yeah, so firstborn sons are only sons who are firstborn. So if you have a daughter first, the son after that is not the firstborn. So she
Can't
is the
you see?
firstborn, but she is not claimed. So,
Can't
Okay,
you
so-
see
so-
they don't make daughters here? Okay,
I saved
I'm
my
leaving.
dad 5 shekels.
bye bye everyone.
Bye.
Have a good one, Pete.
she just saves the parents 5 shekels.
So it wouldn't be like the son that is born first. So if you had like a daughter first and then a son, even though that is the first son you had.
Yeah.
that-
They are not
It has to be the
born,
firstborn son.
So yeah, the one thing that I see of not the one, there are a couple things I see of note, but one of the more interesting things is probably the ideological meaning behind the text. So once we're talking about the priestly tradition and the anointing tradition per se, then it seems like this is giving an origin story to that tradition. So so Levine points out that in the priestly literature of the Torah, we find two discrete traditions or viewpoints regarding the status of the high priest. According to Leviticus 8, the record of the investiture of the Aaronid priesthood, only Aaron himself was anointed with pure oil, not his sons. They were purified in another manner. Furthermore, in Leviticus 8, Aaron, the high priest, is instructed to don distinctive vestments not worn by his sons. This view is also expressed in Leviticus 21, where the high priest is distinguished from other priests by virtue of his unique unction. But Leviticus 4 speaks of the anointed priest as the effective leader of the Israelite community. So they are essentially establishing an ideological narrative about why they do this and how far this goes back. Right, it's tying it back to the to Aaron.
Establishing theocracy forever and all time, and the priests as equivalent to any earthly rulers or above them, which I'm
I have a
sure was
comment.
completely from God.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why there's you don't get any specifics on like anything that, you know, God should be telling us about how, well, things we would need to know, right? You know, you invented the universe, you invented the planet. There's certain things you should be telling people that God never goes around to telling us. But he does get very specific on whose job it is to put the tabernacle together and take it down exactly how it's supposed to be built and all of that. Those things we have to be very specific about. Eric Wander says, a question for Tomer. I don't know if this was addressed already or not. Let me know if it was. But why are all the numbers round? Seems very odd. Well, how could round numbers be odd?
No, I mean, I think he means that they are rounded to the nearest 100, except for God, I think,
I
which
don't.
is rounded
I
to the nearest
personally.
50.
I
Maybe not
personally
necessarily rounded,
don't
but the
know.
numbers are.
I mean, my conjecture is that they considered like round numbers more preferable or more perfect than regular numbers. But again, I could be wrong.
Or it's
I
as
think that he was
simple as
making a joke.
inflation. But
I think he's making a joke in this one.
well, I mean, no, Aaron was making the joke, but but yeah, I think that they would essentially be just inflating their numbers. Like if we want to inflate a number, we can easily add a zero.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they would say 1,000 instead of, like, you know, something else. It seems more more what's the
Impressive?
word? And not even impressive, more official, maybe.
Yes, men inflating numbers to sound more important than they are. I've surely never heard of this.
Yeah, surely never. Surely
Yeah,
that doesn't happen.
There's another discrepancy, which is right. We just counted the Levites, and there were like 22,000 of them, and they counted from 1 month and up. That's a lot less than any of the other tribes.
Yeah,
even
just the children
when they were
alone, yeah.
counting 20 years and up. So
We got
it's
a
kinda
comment
strange.
from Rachel Light who says, just out of curiosity, how were twins that were firstborns dealt with, which are known to happen sometimes?
Probably the first one out.
Yep.
Yeah, that
Red
was the case
string.
with Jacob and Esau.
Red string around the wrist.
Yeah,
Or
except
or
the red
extremity.
string, because Jacob got the red string because he stuck his hand out, and then his brother was like, "No, get out of the way," and went back inside. And then, you know, it was a whole
Yeah.
scrambling to get out.
Yeah. I think there's another story of twins in a later book that has a similar thing. More explicit.
Okay, I'll start my commentary. First, on verse 1. This is the account of the family of Aaron and Moses. The line of Moses is not given here at all. Rashi comments that according to the Talmud Sanhedrin 19b, anyone who teaches Torah to someone else's son is considered as having procreated him. Thus, since Moses taught Torah to the sons of Aaron, they are also considered his children. Because reasons.
Yeah, well, the thing
However-
is, they do that even in what book was that? Was that in Proverbs? Yeah, it was in Proverbs where it's using, you know, kind of paternal language, even though it's very obvious this is someone's teacher and not their actual father. But they use that same kind of son-father language in Proverbs.
Yeah. However, Nachmanides, Rashbam, and Bechor Shor wrote that Moses' line was reckoned among the Levites based on the mention of the Amramites in verse 27, and from Numbers 26:59 and 1 Chronicles 23 verses 13 to 14. Milgrom proposed that Moses' genealogy is ignored because one branch of his descendants seems to have become the priests of the condemned golden calf of Dan, as in Judges 18:30 and 1 Kings 12 verses 28 to 30. He further writes that this genealogical notice is an attempt to separate the Aaronite tribe from the rest of the Levites.
And the one at Dan may have been an addition, a later addition.
Fair enough. It's not like the first one we've run into of that either.
Yeah, right. I think we even have an addition in this, like a very clear addition in this chapter. Is it verse 40 or verse 41? One of those, but.
Verse 4. During the lifetime. In Hebrew, it's al pnei. Some, like the Peshitta, Rashi, and Sfono, read it as in the lifetime of Aaron, based on Genesis 11:28. Others, like the Vulgate, Ibn Ezra, and Chizkuni, read it in the presence of Aaron, based on the literal rendering of al pnei as against the face. Milgrom and Levine support the former, and Ashley the latter. The commentators writes that al pnei refers to the beginning of the verse and does not refer to Eleazar and Ithamar, but to Nadab and Abihu, who died during the lifetime of their father. He notes that 1 Chronicles 24:2 understands this verse similarly. Verse 7, duties. In Hebrew, it's mishmeret. As Milgrom notes, mishmeret means guard duty in connection with the tabernacle. He further writes, Numbers 153 has indicated in advance that the Levitical cordon round the tabernacle both guards it from incursion by the laity and protects the latter from suffering the consequent wrath of God. The guard duty of the Levites is a lifelong responsibility that presumably would begin at adolescence and continue into old age, as seen in 8 verses 25 to 26. No retirement. In contrast to this, the hard labor of dismantling, transporting, and reassembling the tabernacle, called avodah, terminates at age 50. It is limited to the age of maximum physical strength, as seen in 4 verses 3, 23, and 30, and 8, 24. Verse 8, fulfilling the obligations. Oh, somebody want to say something?
No, I was just thinking, I said it before and I'll say it again. The thing God's people apparently need to be most protected from is God. That's a healthy relationship.
Verse 8, fulfilling the obligations. While Licht proposes that the last part of verse 8 is a repetition of the last part of verse 7, Milgrom and Ashley disagree. Ashley writes, verse 7 deals with the Levites' work in the camp, and verse 8 deals with their work on the march. This is shown by the reference to the furnishings, kelim, that the Levites guard. When the camp is set up, these furnishings are inside the tabernacle enclosure, guarded by the priests, as seen in 3:38 and 18:5. The Levites guard the area out in front of lifnei, the tabernacle, in 3:7. The only time the holy object will be exposed is on the march. Here, the general word work, avodah, refers to the erecting, disassembling, disassembling, and carrying that will be assigned to the various Levite groups later in this chapter and in the next. The two verses are distinct in their references, and both are necessary to provide information on the duties of the Levites. The phrase, and this guard duty is on behalf of the Israelites, interrupts the flow of the sentence in order to reinforce the idea, already present elsewhere in the text, that the Levites' guard duty is really on behalf of and for the benefit of the whole community. And about verses 11 to 13. So I have, I think it's quite an extensive quote from Heath Jewell's book, Child Sacrifice in Ancient Israel, pages 166 to 167. So he first writes, in the case of the general firstborn sacrifice, however, the holiness materials rhetoric diverges sharply from that of Deuteronomy. As observed above, Deuteronomy's law of the firstborn, Deuteronomy 15 verses 19 to 23, fails to mention children at all. They simply are not subject to its version of the command. The holiness material, however, acknowledges Yahweh's claim to firstborn children, but finds, or probably more accurately invents, an ingenious loophole that allows it to avoid requiring actual child sacrifice. Yahweh's claim to firstborn children is acknowledged 3 times in the holiness material. First in Numbers 3 verses 12 to 51, again in Numbers 8 verses 14 to 19, and finally in Numbers 18 verses 15 to 18. And he then quotes these sections. Here, as in the covenant code, but unlike in Deuteronomy, the law of the firstborn applies both to human and animal firstborn. In the holiness material, they are both called bechor, as in the earlier codes, as well as peter rechem, breach of the womb. Further, as in the covenant code, but unlike in Deuteronomy, there is no explicit distinction between the sexes. Additionally, here rather than you will give, Natan, the root Natan, is in the covenant code. Yahweh speaking in the first person repeatedly declares that the firstborn are mine, li. The agency of the claim is thus shifted from the individual Israelite unto Yahweh. The fact is further underlined by the connection of Yahweh's claim to Israelite firstborn with the original Passover event. By killing the Egyptian firstborn and sparing the Israelites, Yahweh has obtained a perpetual claim on Israelite firstborn, both children and cattle. Yahweh has decided, however, to accept the service of the Levites in lieu of Israelite firstborn. And then he goes on and he says, thus, contrary to Deuteronomy, the holiness material acknowledges Yahweh's claim to firstborn children, but, like Deuteronomy, has no desire to see this requirement carried out via literal sacrifice. With some intellectual and rhetorical effort, the holiness material manages both to affirm the statement of the covenant code concerning Yahweh's claim to firstborn children, but also to avoid its implication that they actually be sacrificed to him. As a happy side effect, this rhetorical strategy also provides an etiology for the special devotion of the Levites to Yahweh's service.
How convenient. We don't have to kill our kids, and we're able to weave it into our doctrinal necessity for now.
Verse 15. Levine comments, the Levites were to be registered somewhat differently from the other tribes. All males 1 month of age or older were to be listed. According to Numbers 1, the fighting forces included only adult males 20 years of age or older. The logic of the distinction is fairly apparent. The Levites were a hereditary group, and a male becomes a member of the group as soon as he was deemed viable, at the age of 30 days. According to the definition of viability in the priestly votive system in biblical Israel, as in Leviticus 27:6 and Numbers 18:16. After all, the Levites were devoted persons in the cultic sense. In Numbers 8:24, we read that the Levites began their actual service in the tabernacle only at the age of 25, whereas Numbers 4:3 has them begin their service at the age of 30. Presumably, Levites underwent a protracted period of training prior to assuming their active duties. Verse 16, by the word of the Lord. In Hebrew, it's Al Pi Yehovah. Rashi, based on Numbers Rabbah 9:3, writes, Moses said before the Holy One, blessed be he, how can I enter into their tents to determine the number of the nursing infants? The Holy One, blessed be he, replies, do yours, and I will do mine. Moses proceeded and stood at the door of the tent, whereupon the divine presence preceded him and entered the tent. A voice then echoed from the tent, announcing, there are so-and-so nursing infants in this tent. This is why it is said according to the word of God, end quote. Milgrom supports this interpretation and suggested reading Al-Pi as oracle, based on the absence of the procedure of writing down the names as is indicated by the Israelite census in 1 verses 2 and 18, and that of the Israelite firstborn, 3 verses 40 and 43. He writes, the reason for this distinction may be rooted in the fear of taking a census. Its dire consequences can be avoided only if each individual pays a half shekel ransom, as in Exodus 30 verses 11 to 16 and Numbers 31 verses 48 to 54. But this ransom, presumed in the account of the census of Israel's fighting force, is obviated in the census of the Levites because God himself has taken their account. This indeed may explain why the notice of God's selection of the Levites in 3 verses 11 to 13 precedes the account of their census. God counts them personally, thereby avoiding the dangers of a census.
So it's more reasonable to get God to personally go into a tent and look at the titties than to ask a woman.
It's good to be the God.
I think it's the logistics. I think it's the logistics of having to go into every tent to count, as opposed to just walk past and have an announcement.
I gotta say, this does feel like a really badly written Mel Brooks book. It really does.
It really, really does.
Truthful Serpent says, I sometimes wonder what religion would be dominant in the Western world if the Abrahamic faiths just never caught on. Thoughts? I would say Zoroastrianism.
See, I would say okay. So we gotta so if it never caught on at all, like if it so we can't really go back to like like would because I think Rome would still have probably would still have succeeded right?
Yeah, but Rome
for a
was
while. But then,
cosmopolitan and tolerant. You had a variety of traditions.
right. But then, like, eventually, they probably still would have fallen apart anyways, even
Mm.
without Christianity or the Abrahamic faiths. So
Well,
That's a
then,
very difficult what if.
it
That's
is
one
a
of the
what if.
biggest
It's a
difficult
difficult what if.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Monotheism based on Mithraism.
Oh,
Or
actually,
'cause I'm
you could actually
thinking-
make an argument. You can make an argument that other religions across the world could have had dominance too. I mean, we have
well,
Yeah.
Chinese and Mongolian
No.
influence. We even have,
You know what?
who
Yeah, that's it.
knows,
The
because
Mongols.
if Christianity didn't exist, if the Christianity didn't exist, then you would have, the Aztec and other cultures would have survived anyway, and they would never have been destroyed by the conquistadors. So perhaps there'd be two major different demographics in different parts of the world. We
Right,
don't
but
know.
could they?
And,
Could
and
they
we'd be
also-
doing this show
State.
reading the Popol Vuh.
Right, but
Possibly.
could they have done? Could they have still been, taken over by someone else? I don't know. Maybe the Mongols. I like that answer.
What about the Hindi?
Yeah,
there's a
India
lot of
and
Very
Hinduism
well.
and-
factors involved. A lot of different
It's-
factors. That's a
I-
really
I've said
difficult
before,
what if.
I think Christianity surpassed Mithraism and other similar cults of its time because of the paradox of tolerance, because it was intolerant and others were tolerant. It's entirely possible that whatever else emerged would have adopted a similar intolerance, which is the part that is so destructive,
Right.
but it is effective in wielding people together and giving them endless justifications for every evil and atrocity.
And then
Mhm.
Dr. Dino offers $5 and says, Hola ha, my good nerds. I need help deciding the topic of my next video. Can't choose between Zul Kruirvastator or the Mongolian fighting dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs,
Ooh.
man.
Mongolian fighting dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Yes, Kung Fu Raptors.
I don't know what Zulkurvastor is.
Oh, it's a species of dinosaur. It looks like an ankylosaur. Yeah, Ankylosauridae.
Sounds
It
fun.
was mistaken for a dog when it was found in the refrigerator.
It's quite,
Leaving that one alone.
Oh, you're
apparently
funny.
it's from Montana. So no idea why the genus name is Zool.
And then, let's see, this just shifted.
There it is.
Eric Wander says, how many male Levites more than 1 month old did Moses and Aaron count? 22,000 or 22,273? Also, who is Libni's father, Gershon or Mali, like it says in 1 Chronicles 6:29?
I have a comment on the first
Two
part. on the second
daddies.
part.
Okay, Tomer?
I have a comment on the first part, but when I'll get to that part, I'll talk about it.
Okay, we're going to do that now?
I actually
see
have
another comment.
I have
Okay,
a question about-
Wait. Lilith wanted to say something.
I have a question about the babies, since apparently the role of the Levites was to, protect the people from God by forming a ring around him. And anyone of any age could do that. Whereas, obviously you had to have a certain amount of physical strength and training to take apart the temple bits and all the rest of it. Did they make like one of those invisible shock collar fences for God out of all the Levite babies? Just encircling the tabernacle to keep him encased in Levite babies. The Levite babies and old Ben could just like ring around the god and keep him from smiting the poor schmuck who walks past.
Jeez.
Come on.
All right. And then Trevon Wright says, another question is the 70 nations mentioned to suggest that Abraham is the father of many nations, and what is the writer trying to convey by mentioning these nations or genealogy?
The 70 nations are from Noah, not from Abraham, and they're supposed to represent all the nations of the world.
Yeah, it's definitely meant to be more of a genealogical note. But the thing is, like, a lot of cultures do the same sort of thing, right? So any time you have a myth of the destruction of the world, you're gonna have to repopulate it somehow. So
Okay, I'll continue my commentary. Verse 31, the curtain. Samaritan text has the addition and the laver and its base, since they are also considered as most holy in Exodus 30 verses 28 to 29, and according to Milgrom, would be expected to be placed in the custody of the Kohathites. Verse 39 about
just a
Aaron here.
second.
Oh, sorry.
Because you've already gone to 31. Can we go back
Yes.
with the numbers? If
Yes.
you have a calculator, can you add up
About
the
the
individual
22,000.
numbers?
I have a comment to this, but this will be in. But the number is.
When you get to the total.
39.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So, about verse 39, Aaron. So, Aaron's name does not appear in the Peshitta and the Samaritan text. However, Peter, can you please show the third picture of that bird?
The dots.
Yeah. In the Masoretic text, Aaron's name has dots above each letter. These dots are called puncta extraordinaria, or extraordinary points, and are also found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Professor Emmanuel Tov, for example, notes that in the Isaiah Scroll 317, the word ba has dots above it. And can you please show the fourth picture?
Ba?
Yes, ba. Here.
Oh.
So this is that's from the Isaiah Scroll 317, and this word does not appear in the Masoretic text of the same verse. He writes that the dotted word in our verse shows that there existed a textual tradition of a shorter text. According to Avot de Rabbi Natan 34:5, the dots indicate that Aaron himself was not counted. Licht comments that the dots perhaps indicate doubt regarding mentioning Aaron here, since in verse 16, Moses alone commanded the Levites. And if you're interested, I'm posting on the Peter. I posted the article by Manuel Tov, which discusses about the scribal marks as well. We see the inverted nuns in Numbers 10 and all that stuff. So, and you can remove the picture.
That's a very old version of the Hebrew.
Yes.
alphabet.
Yes.
Yeah, that's from Qumran, right?
Yes, that's Sea Scrolls. Yes, I said scroll. Verse about 22,000. When adding all the numbers of the previous verses, we get 22,300. And according to Chazal in Talmud Bachot 5a, the additional 300 were firstborn, and it was sufficient for them to release themselves from their own redemption. Licht, however, writes that if it was the case, why was this detail missing from the text? The most plausible answer given by Levine, Milgrom, and Ashley is that there is an error in the numbering, perhaps in verse 28, where the word for 6, shesh, was originally 3, shalosh, but due to a copyist error, the letter lamed was removed from shalosh and it became shesh. Ashley writes that in some Hebrew manuscripts and in the Lucianic recension of the Septuagint, the given number in verse 28 is 8,300. Licht proposes that the writer himself made a calculation error. Verse 40, a month old or more. Milgrom comments, an infant younger than 30 days old was not considered a person, seen in Leviticus 27:6 and Tosefta Shabbat Lieberman 15:7, presumably because of the high rate of infant mortality, compared to Tanchuma Buver Numbers 21. This principle is still operative in Jewish practice. Thus, no mourning rites are maintained for an infant under 30 days old, as seen in Moed Katan 24b and Mishneh Torah Mourning 1:6. And finally, verses 44 to 51, Levine comments, the remaining verses detail the adjustment of the differential of 273 persons just recorded. The key verb is pada, to redeem or buy back. The primary context seems to be that of bondage, wherein the owner or master of one in service is compensated for the claim held on the person bound over to him. The Israelites had been in bondage to the Egyptians, and God bought them their freedom, a thought reiterated in Micah 6:4 and Deuteronomy 21:8. And that's it for my commentary.
Yes.
Well
We're
done.
done with this shit.
Instructions.
Well, we're just starting it, but yes, I love the yes.
Yeah, we're done with the most boring part of numbers, I think.
No, there's
Yeah.
actually
No,
numbers
there's still
4.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
numbers 4, and
Oh,
then number
right.
7, which is 89 verses, which don't have a
Right.
lot of of things to say. But
I thought the Kothites one was about Korah for a split second. I was having fantasies that we were just gonna, kill a bunch of people and yeah.
Yep.
No, we can't do that. We have to have more
oh my god!
genealogies.
Once we get
Let me-
to that story, like the rebellion. Oh boy, that's going to be a textual jungle. So
Yeah. I'm going to read
Yep.
a couple more comments here. Eyeshadow Z40 offers $5 with no message. Thank you very much. Then Eyeshadow Z40 offers $5 again and says, the more I think about it, it's not impressive that Jesus led a perfect life. Everything God does is holy. Jesus is God. So what would be sinful?
well, there was the time that he told his disciples to go out and steal a donkey. He said that there would be one tied up outside the city, which there was, but that means it belongs to somebody, and then they just took it, and they were like, "Oh, it's for God." Then
Yeah, but that's the argument. If it's for God, then it's not a sin
right,
because
yeah, I guess.
Jesus.
I mean, I guess you
Yeah.
could see it as if it was outside the city, then it was like left legally ownerless.
Like an
Yeah, because
abandoned.
that's how that works.
No, right,
There was an idea you could like declare something.
It was hardly even locked.
That's a lot to take
Then-
in.
Then Caden Pat offers $9.99 and says, did you post your Exodus 14 discussion? I don't see it. I wanted to see your commentary on crossing of the Red Sea.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's
So
in Exodus 13 in the Aaron's.
yeah.
So in the
'cause
video,
Aaron does this thing where instead of listing the chapters he's going to read, he lists only the first chapter we're going to read.
Yes, we do sometimes do more than one chapter at a time, albeit not in the first 2 weeks.
Right.
yeah,
But,
so
yeah.
the name
Yeah.
of the video is the first chapter we read. So if you're looking for chapter 14, then it should be in the one that is 13 probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we all good for Wednesday again?
I will not be good for Wednesday because classes are starting.
Oh no.
Yeah,
So we're going to have to, are we going to have to then go just to the weekends from now on?
Well, I could do either Tuesday or Thursday. I could try to maintain this. I don't know how big my workload's going to be, but yeah, I could try to do Tuesdays, or I could probably do this Tuesday definitely. But yeah, I'll let you know the workload.
Okay.
How
well,
is it that whenever I actually have Wednesday off, then we change the
Lawrence
schedule
doesn't.
again?
Yeah.
Once we get to October, definitely we'll do on the weekends because I'll start my master's studies.
Yeah, me too.
Well,
Actually,
congratulations
I
on
probably
that,
just did
Sumer.
that too.
Good job.
Congratulations. Yeah.
So it's only a
well,
couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
A month.
is it worth doing Tuesday for 2 weeks and then stopping?
It's a month, right?
I mean, the thing is, it will help
Yeah.
us get through the book faster.
Wow.
Well, I'm saying it's only
Yes.
a couple of more episodes, but yeah. I mean, I'm
So-
available every Tuesday. So.
I mean, we're not doing this bi-weekly. We've got the whole month.
Yes.
Okay, so we can do, we're talking about, we'll switch it to Tuesday for the remainder of September.
Tuesday works for me.
All right, so we'll do Saturday and Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, well, I guess we'll see everybody then on Tuesday, and we're going to be doing numbers. Where are we? Are we doing numbers 4?
Yeah.
Yes, numbers 4.
Excellent.
Okay, I might be able to show up on Tuesday, perhaps. I'll see. what
And I also do want to point out that so tomorrow on Atheist Sunday School, we'll be starting the best book of the Bible, Revelation.
I thought it was hard.
Oh, crazy pants! All right, let the madness
Revelation.
commence.
Very.
Oh, by
very-
the way, Lawrence, you asked me to watch your show yesterday, and unfortunately, I was in a restaurant.
That's fine. That's fine. The plan didn't work anyways. That YouTube fixed their glitch.
Okay.
We're trying to exploit a glitch. That did, and they fixed it.
Damn.
Yeah.
All right, and
Where's
so
the- say that.
we've got all the comments. Yes, Lilith, were you going to say
Oh,
something?
sorry. No, I was just muttering about a video game. Don't worry about it.
All right, very good. I will see you guys on Tuesday. Thank you all.